The truck, the food truck, that's great. Excellent. I like visuals. Three-dimensional. This is better than visuals, this is three.
My son played with little matchboxes for the longest time.
Yes,
I kept
yes,
thinking, is he ever gonna outgrow that?
Oh, he's a lobsterman?
No, he's a oysterman.
Oysterman.
He does oysters.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, wow.
It's really cute.
Very.
Yeah, she said she glued them down.
Oh, really?
Her son
Oh,
came and
my.
was trying to take them.
Oh, that's funny. So you can hold the whole thing up?
And this is like that.
That's great. Excellent.
Hello, my darling. I don't know, it's here. I just turned the lights on.
It was exactly there when I arrived,
Chalmers, you were playing with.
half an hour ago. It was-
That's
I
cute.
love your hair.
How are you?
Very good, how are
Fire
you?
pit on.
Good, good.
We can turn the fire
Your
pit.
train is coming through.
So good.
It's like, wow. I've never heard it this close. So did Cumberland vote now? Housing? That was the big thing. I mean,
Which one was it?
the housing,
yes,
the
that's
vote
right,
for
the Drown
housing.
Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you couldn't miss it when you drove on Route
right.
88. Oh.
I know, you
Oh,
did, you helped me
it's
with
not
that.
available. Oh. Oh, well.
How are you?
How are you? Good, good.
Yeah. Do you have fun reading all the
Oh,
chapters?
yes, definitely. I spaced my timing of it out. It's like I'm not gonna spend the whole time at once.
I know it's a little bit of like information
Oh,
overload.
yes.
Evening. Good, how are you?
So, I know you don't sign any paper, but if you want to, we had all those recent changes to zoning ordinances with
Right.
I was thinking about doing this. I think I went through it, I printed and put new in here,
Oh, wow.
but I can't remember. Honestly.
Whoa.
Well, the latest changes were recently uploaded on.
Okay. Oh, so you didn't.
No, I did not.
Did
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No.
Whatever you have, most likely copy it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can send you ones, but I don't know if you don't want that, that's okay, or I can print.
No, I will take a picture.
Yeah.
Put it in my binder, so I
Right.
I mean, I have like things on here too, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although we might have more.
Right.
Every other
I
month.
just refresh it.
Right.
That's okay with me.
What do we do with the old papers? I mean, do we bring them in and you shred them, or we can just recycle them and?
We just recycle them.
Okay, great. That tells me, and I'm, because I thought, oh, maybe I should find out if we have to do something. Great. Oh, wow. My goodness, thank you. Excellent.
So we kind of built it like this, so for easy access for emergency exit and emergency entry. To just have that front area. Might change some, a little bit of the setting, but not by much, depending on the size of the food truck too. Yeah, we'll have them unhooked and then you get to park them lower in the upper parking lot and then we come back here.
Yes, so that's okay.
And this year will just be basically like next year.
know, it's a bit much, but to update.
This is my caffeine to get me through
Oh my
tonight.
gosh,
Well, I brought that, I was like, no, I think I need more than that.
oh my god.
Pretty sad, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, 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 definitely. And I think Mitch is absent.
Yes, I knew he wasn't. Well, it's funny, there was a man that reminded me of him the other day, when he was about to retire, he just, you know,
Right.
no.
Yeah.
And he stopped me and looked at me, I'm like, no, it's just locking my car. He waved at me. There's a gentleman over there in the plaid, talking to Andy.
Yeah.
Hi,
How are you?
good. I printed you a new binder.
Yes, I see all that. I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah, and it had an email and it's just basically a notice. It's just on our ordinance that if somebody does a demolition, we have to notify the planning board. So,
Oh, LLPs?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We got that on in the email.
yes.
Yeah, good.
Bonnie and Andy are off the grid, so they do all paper. And you're welcome to be
Well,
off
I'm
the
not.
grid if you want to. I mean, like,
It's just because of freedom of access, whatever, act.
I mean, like digitally
I
off
don't
the
want
grid.
somebody taking my phone and, you know, like my life is in my phone. and
Oh,
all my-
okay. Oh, whoa, whoa.
Well, when she mentioned, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think I need that one. Oh, well, yeah, we don't need me on there. It's because. I don't know. Why am I? Don't like myself on there.
So you,
It's
you
6:06.
just hit start when he's ready to go.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, we're muted. If you want to start it now, go ahead.
All right. So it looks like it's
Sam, thanks for
off.
joining us. You doing
How was
okay?
swim lesson?
Scrambling.
Recording in progress.
Oh,
That doesn't make it,
it's here.
doesn't make it that much easier.
It's tough to be a parent of littles.
That's okay.
Try to make it all work.
Okay. Real struggle today.
Should be here.
For the first time in a long time, I lost a huge section of work to like a frozen computer.
Ooh,
Like 5:30, just like,
That is so upsetting.
like well,
Seriously.
there goes half a day of work.
ooh, that's not
That was
good.
frustrating.
Very frustrating.
I'm so sorry.
It'll be a lot faster the second time.
This is true, and you, yeah.
My former sister-in-law was in law school and didn't have it on autosave. She lost a huge paper.
That's like, because everything has to be on the server, so it's like, sometimes you get lazy and you don't use autosave because it doesn't work when
It
it's on the
doesn't,
server.
right, right.
We're gonna start probably soon.
Yeah, we should be.
Oh, well, perfect storm.
I know.
Stuff.
No, it's a little tricky with the hybrid thing.
Mitch is absent. He
I
said
want
that.
to remind everybody, if you forget to turn your mic on, I'm going to flash those Christmas tree lights at you to remind you to put it back on. You want to wait for Mitch, or would you like to?
Mitch
He's
is
not
out, I
coming.
guess, tonight, so yeah, so
He's
we're
out.
good. Yep,
You good
He-
to go?
we're good.
So, if you want to take a short break between the meeting and the
It'll be,
workshop, we're going to stay up here for the workshop.
yep, it'll be timing dependent on that one, so yeah.
Great.
All right.
All right, give me 30 seconds.
Yep. All right, we'll call that about 30 seconds. Thanks to everyone for being here. Welcome to the March 6th meeting of the Freeport Planning Board. My pleasure to call the meeting to order. It is a few minutes after 6. We'll dive right in. Item number 1, as always, is the information exchange. And first, Cecilia, do you have an update on the Freeport Climate Action Plan for us?
Yeah, so not much changes from last week. The climate action plan is still on draft mode. I urge everyone to go read it. It's really well put together document. It has a lot of information. It's pretty interesting, but it's also easy to read the document. Medi, our sustainability coordinator, did a great job putting the document together in a way that I think It's easy to follow, considering the complexity of the information. And you can comment on the draft and make, if there's anything you want to comment or add, you're welcome to do so. And to do so, and to read the draft, you could just go online to the website and you could access the draft through there. We do have a paper copy here at Town Hall too. And there is going to be a first Maine trivia night at the Maine Beer Company on March 18th from 6 o'clock till 8 p.m. And there's going to be a paper copy of the plan there, and it's a place where you could go check it out at the event. So you're welcome to go do that and talk and think about the climate action plan.
So
Maine
that's
Beer
March
Company.
18th, 6 to 8
Yes.
at Maine Beer?
Yes.
And the trivia is related to the plan or is not related to the plan?
All I know is that it's Maine trivia, so go in there with, brush
gonna
up
be
on your
like,
Maine history and.
What's the heading on page 6? No.
I don't
would be
think it's
fun.
going to be that, but.
Cool. All right. Item number 2 is an update on the downtown vision plan implementation.
Yes, so, we all know that we have recently done those short-term changes to the design review ordinance, chapter 22, to make it a little bit easier to understand or follow through. But the second step of that was to hire consultants to really work on updating that ordinance. We are hopefully going to have an RFP perhaps next week to put it out there to, have a consultant come and help us clean up that ordinance and make it work for the town. The planning board will be leading that project, and there should be some participation from the Central Core Working Group and the Project Review Board members. And also it will be something that will, the public should be getting involved too and giving feedback on how to redo that ordinance.
Right. Yeah, I think Caroline, I know she's been working hard on that. I know she has a draft at least that I think she's editing for a final round. So hopefully, next week, and then we'll be able to move quickly from there. So relatively quickly at least. A report of items reviewed by the PRB.
Sure, I had two more, there's two more things on the
two more
the
on the,
downtown vision
yes.
plan. We don't know if I got a chance to mention this at the last meeting, but we also are doing like a parking requirements assessment. Did we mention that at the last
I
meeting?
think we did, yeah,
Okay.
but there've probably hopefully been some updates since then. But.
Yeah, so they hired Walker Consultants, and they're going to be doing a pretty thorough review of our past parking studies and our current requirements. So hopefully that will help inform our parking needs so that when we're redoing the parking ordinance, we have that information to go by. And that should be hopefully ready, before the summer, maybe in May.
Great.
And Brett Richardson from FEDC has also been working with, to do this infrastructure analysis for potentially having a transit-oriented development district. So that is, that's going to be helpful too, and you might be seeing something down the line. Does anyone not know what a transit-oriented development is?
I don't know what it is.
Okay, so basically a transit-oriented development is this concept of when you have like a metro station, or for us it could be the train station, but you have an area and you really want to incentivize people, you really want to develop the mixed-use walkable area. So you use this technique so that you have really high density, oftentimes about half a mile from that transit station, often used on like a metro station or something like that, but we could use around the Amtrak or, I think the bus stops. And then you have like higher density on those areas, and then you scale it down so that you really, not only that having that higher density helps with having better transit, but because you need those people to be there to support that transit, because you can't build a metro or bus station in the middle of nowhere. So I could definitely give you guys some more information about that, and we could talk about that in the future in terms of just transit-oriented development. But Brett Richardson said he would be happy to come give a presentation on the study and what they're looking at.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of work that's gone into that, and there've been a couple of good presentations over the last month. One, two, I think was at the library to the FEDC board, and then there was another workshop ahead of the town council meeting, I think last week or the week before maybe, that was sort of showing some studies and talking about that transit district proposed kind of south of town that Brett's been working hard on. There's materials out there, and I would encourage folks to check that out, because I think there's some really good work that's going into that and a lot of interesting data coming out of it, and hopefully we can use that to guide.
Yeah, so the study they're looking at is like how much infrastructure do we have and how much we'd need to be able to support, higher density or more housing. And that will help us, inform our decisions on how we go about.
Right, and also, I have not spent as much time as I would like to yet with these data, but I think there's a piece of it too that's showing what, different scenarios of that build out could look like for the tax base in town, for population, for, all kinds of, there's a lot of different ways of looking at it, and hopefully that gives us some sort of structure that we can work within as we go forward and try to make decisions about how, the zoning might need to change in those areas, or what kind of changes we could expect, as residents of Freeport too, so.
So that was it.
Anything else from?
No, that was it for the downtown vision plan implementation. So report of items reviewed by the project review board. So the project review board was very busy last meeting. On February 21st, there were several projects. I can go through them, but once again, you're always welcome to go to the town website and look at the materials there too, and keep, looking at the agenda. So there was a multiple family dwelling proposal where because when it's multiple family, you have to go through subdivision review. So this is for the former spot of where the Petrillo's building was that burned up. So they got an extension. I believe they had gotten conceptual review. They had gone through that, so they got an extension for that. So they would have to come back to the board to do a final subdivision review for that project. And then on 30 Moore Street, we had a mixed housing, like a house and office place, so a mixed-use development. That was approved as well. And then we had the Whitetail subdivision, which is on Route 1 North, on the MDA district, and that was granted a 4-lot, 8-unit, 4 duplexes, open space subdivision. So that was approved. Then we have that big project, the Ella Bean is doing a bunch of updates to their campus or flagship store on Main Street. The phase 1 was sort of like the Main Street side of their site alterations, and that was approved. They should be back again soon for phase 2, which is the rest of the area. Then we had a shoreline stabilization project that was approved, and another project for mixed use on 59 Depot Street that was, so that they were converting a garage into an office space so they could have a hair salon.
How long was this meeting?
It was probably very long. I wasn't there, but there was a lot of projects, including one that was tabled, so.
Wow. I did note it I saw somewhere in the notes from that meeting or something that the project review board was very pleased in the way that Bean had responded to their earlier comments. So there were some, Bean went back after there was a site walk, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they kind of went back and were very responsive to the PRB's
And there was
critiques.
kind of one particular issue from two sides, I think.
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
How did they resolve
There was
that?
the stair tower
Yeah.
that I think had some detractors, let's say.
detractors, yeah.
And, they made some updates. I don't remember exactly what they did, but they changed the color scheme, added windows maybe,
Okay.
and, so anyway, just a little sort of glimpse into the way that part of the process is working, which I think hopefully is, it can be healthy to get a little feedback from the PRB and then make some changes, so. Number 4 is an update on the status of current and future planning board projects. Just briefly to go through this. Cecilia, do you mind?
Yeah, so for those of you that might have not new paper zoning ordinance binders. I can produce a new one because we just recently uploaded the new version of the zoning ordinance online. I don't have any updates in terms of future projects apart from the comprehensive plan that we're going to be discussing tonight. For next month, I think we're also going to be looking again at the draft chapters. And in addition to, we have something new that's being introduced today, which is the height, the maximum height on the VC1 district, which we'll have an initial discussion today that might come back on our next meeting. And then I have not forgotten about the comparison of our subdivision versus site plan review for multifamily, and I will hopefully be ready to bring that to the board in the next couple of months.
Great. All right. Yeah, I know. I need a new binder. Mine is way out of date. So
Just
at some
one thing
point-
I would just, do you want to mention for the public about the date of the demolition? Or the public hearing for the demolition application?
Oh, yeah, so whenever there's a demolition of a building here in the design review, I guess they have to notify the planning board, so, because one of the, part of the site plan application of Ella Bean is to demolish part of one of their buildings, there was a public notice for that.
That's March 20th, I believe. Yeah, March 20th at 6 PM.
Thank you.
Do we know what, is that a building on Main Street or somewhere else?
My understanding, and I don't review those applications, but my understanding is just that it's like the facade of one of the buildings. I think it just might be old enough that would meet that requirement of having, I think, I like our demolition ordinance. I think the intent of it was to protect a lot of historical older houses and to give people time to, like, if somebody wanted to move the house somewhere else to, have that adequate notice to be able to do that.
Yeah, my understanding of what's going on there is there's a part of it's basically the part of where the camping section is in the flagship store right now, so there's that high sort of atrium. It's not right there, I don't think, but part of that structure is original. And so it doesn't really even look, I think most of the original part has been covered up, but because they're changing it, they triggered some sort of technical provision that required them to make that notification. But I think from our perspective as Freeport residents, we won't really notice. Obviously we'll notice that things are changing over there, but it's not like hey, why'd they take down that historic structure kind of a change.
It's not going to be a dramatic demolition of any kind, it's just
It's part of the bigger overhaul, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
And the
those-
space the mass of the space is not really changing that much. So they're going to take something down, but then it'll go back up.
And usually the plans showing where, how things are gonna look, or the proposal, they're posted online too on that meeting date, so you could always access those by going to the town calendar, clicking on that project review board meeting, and then you will find the documents there, and then you could look at them.
Great.
That's the old pad.
Yep. Yep.
That's the old pad.
Yep. Yeah, I apologize to LLB if I misrepresented anything there, but hopefully I got the gist of it. All right. Unless anyone else has anything for information exchange, we'll move right along to item number 2, which is a public hearing for proposed amendments to Section 501, temporary activity, and Section 526.a, food trucks of the Freeport zoning ordinance. We're holding a public hearing tonight to discuss proposed text amendments to Section 501 and Section 526.a to increase the number of food trucks allowed as an accessory use up to 8 food trucks for a maximum of 6 months, contingent upon securing a temporary activity permit. So we talked about this was it just last month?
Last month,
And I
yeah.
think the
Yep.
board was generally in favor of bringing this to a public hearing and getting some feedback, and hopefully moving forward to support this plan in some way. I think the sense that I remember from the board was especially that this is a temporary, change that we will have, or it is for a fixed period of time, like a 6-month period, contingent upon securing a temporary activity permit. There will be ample opportunities to review how this is going in the future, and it seemed like a pretty, a good change to support some activity in town.
Yeah, and to, just in case there's any confusion, it's it's not going, the changes that we are proposing today are not temporary
Yes,
changes.
sorry, yes, that's a good clarification. Yep.
Yeah, no, yes, sometimes you could have like a pilot program,
Right,
so this
yep.
is not for like a pilot program. They would be permanent unless we decide to review them. So nothing in the zoning is permanent, but it would be permanent for what it is until we have another hearing to decide that we're gonna change it. But it would just require that you would need to go get a temporary activity permit so that you could only do it for 6 months out of the year, not
That's
a
the
year
that's the
round.
temporary
Yeah,
part of
that's
it.
the
yeah, sorry.
temporary
Yep,
aspect of
no,
it.
that's a really good
Yep.
clarification. Yep. Before we open the public hearing, do we have, Thais, do you want to give us any context or any additional things that you want to add? Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Thais Silvestris, owner of the Venus Cantina, and hoping to bring the next first food truck park to Freeport. After a lot of going back and forth and working on this plan, I know that we had initially brought to you the concept of bringing in 8 food trucks. Oops. So right now, after doing all the research, I wanted to request to see if we could scale back and possibly go to 5 food trucks instead of 8, because as we were planning this and kind of putting things together, 8 food trucks seems like a lot to be able to manage, and especially with the space that we have right now. So we're hoping that maybe you will reconsider, because I know Caroline said that I would have to ask you guys, since we were initially brought it up to do 8 food trucks, to start with 5. And then later on, we can come back and ask for more, but I don't think that that's where we would want to be. We think 5 food trucks would be ideal for any of those options. So that's my only thing tonight. I mean, we've talked about it several times before, and everyone pretty much has an idea, so we built up the model just so everyone can get a visual of what it's actually going to look like, with depending a little bit of shifting of the food trucks based on sizes as well. Some of them drive, some of them have hitches to them. So this is our plan, and we're hoping that this will work out. I mean, the space that we have has a total of 58 parking spots. We're going to utilize 22 spots for the park. And right now, as you can see, we only have 12 cars parking, so there's an additional 24 for that lower lot that we just didn't add on to the plan. But yeah, the only thing that we wanted to add was just that, to maybe decrease it to 5 instead of 8. I think 8 would be too much in any location on Route 1 anyways. So we just figured that to make this go smoothly, 5 would be ideal. So since we brought it up first at the beginning to ask for that, and you guys were happy to work with it, we're just asking that we scale back to 5 instead of 8. And then I'm here to answer any questions that the public may have, or any additional questions you have.
In your model, can you orient us? Route 1 is on
Route 1 is on
chair
the
side or the?
side, to the left
Okay.
side. And this would be the back side. So we put the food trucks on the left side on Route 1 out of consideration to possibly anybody who's behind that area, residential, I'm not quite sure. Because this year they will be using generators, so we want to, obviously silent generators on that side will be okay, but if we decide to continue with this, they might move to the other side with permanent outlets to be used. So our plan is to eventually not have any generator usage down there.
But as it is, you're saying the generators would be backed up to Route 1, so.
Yes, so you wouldn't be able to even, you wouldn't hear it,
Quieter than.
honestly, so,
Diners would appreciate that, too.
yeah.
A little buffer.
Yeah. So, I mean, our generator itself is just very quiet. You just can't hear it. So when you have 5 food trucks, and we've been at festivals before, you can hear them, but not super, that's going to be disruptive. So that's why we're putting them on this side. It might shift next year to the other side. Like I said, it just depends where we want to put the outlets for permanent infrastructure there.
Question? So how are the vendors selected? Do you know who the food trucks are yet?
So we've had a lot of reach outs to us and asking questions. We're going to have, I mean, it's 6 months out of the year. We're going to rotate them. We're going to have a form online that the vendors will fill out, and they're going to be screened based on their licensing with the town. Everyone has to have the year licensing to be able to participate, to make things easier on the vendors and on us. And we'll have a calendar weekly. Again, a lot of food trucks this summer, I mean, we are a little bit late into the game. A lot of them have already have their schedule set up, but it's going to be where some will be here one day, some will be here for a whole week, some will be there for a whole month, some may be there for the whole 6 months. So it just depends on their schedule as well.
But you'll be managing that whole process?
We'll be managing all that process, yep.
And to clarify for the public, you know, the rules are not necessarily for just one food truck area. It would apply to, you know, any of the districts that allow food trucks as an accessory use, which there's a map on the staff report, just so that you understand that the amendments apply to, you know, anybody that can meet those requirements on the zoning
So
district.
our initial issue with that was that, I discussed this with Carolyn, and I know that this but for us, you guys have done an amazing job trying to speed up this process for us to be able to start this year. Our initial thing is that when you, not everybody is going to operate something like this with respect and love and care like we are, you know, and so if they just start popping up everywhere on Route 1, that's where you kind of lose control. So we don't know if anybody else is going to pop up and just want to build a food truck part. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and obviously, I understand it has to go through all of the regulations that Town Hall has, and, you know, it's a process. The same way we're going through it, someone else has to go through it as well. Our main thing was that there is a chance, if we open this up, that others may want to do it as well. But again, bathrooms, open businesses that are going to open and be able to have the bathroom accessibility and dining or whatever else, if it's a restaurant or if it's just a business. We would like to have, some control over that with you guys to be able to kind of make sure it doesn't pop up 4 or 5 of them on Route 1. So, again, we welcome all of it, you know, because I think more is better. I mean, we need that, we could use it, but we're just hoping that it's just not going to get out of hand to where it's going to take away all of our hard work, and then it just comes back and says, oh, we can't do this because somebody is not doing it properly, you know.
I have to confess, I don't know the provisions of a temporary activity permit all that well, but I would have to assume that there's something in there when you apply for and receive a temporary activity permit. There's somebody who's responsible for the management of that activity, and there's probably some recourse if things don't go well to revoke that permit. So to me, that offers a fairly reasonable protection against things going south in any real serious way.
Well, I mean, our concern was that if it does go south and people just come and they're like, well, this is not working out, that we will be affected by that. If it's not working out for someone, then, and the idea and the concept in people's minds is that if it's not working out for everyone, it's not going to work out at all. So we don't want to be punished for someone else's misuse of, you know, their ability to be able to do something like this.
I see that maybe that's the risk of doing this relatively quickly and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And if that were to happen and you guys were unfairly, not punished, but you know what I mean, there's collateral. If there were collateral, then maybe we just have to go through the process and figure out how to fix it, figure out what changes we could make that would, make it better going forward. So for me, I still feel as I felt last week, where I think it's a good proposal. I think there's some guardrails on it. I like the change going down to 5 food trucks. It feels like, you guys probably have a better sense of 5 food trucks and the traffic associated than we do on the board, just because you spend more time around food trucks than we do. But I think that makes good common sense to me. And again, I would continue to support this, given its, all of the parts and pieces that will, I think, keep it in check if it needs to be kept in check. And I hope it goes really well, because I think we need those sorts of things in town. So,
Just to clarify, the ordinance is still going to say 8 food trucks.
I think we could make that change tonight without renoticing, I think, just to change it. So the ordinance would say 5.
Oh, you're going to, I didn't
Up
realize
to.
that.
I think so, yeah.
It says up to, which means that you could have 5, you could have
Right.
7, you could
But I
have
think
6, but
we could send it to the council with the recommendation that they change it to 5.
To 5.
Is that something we should discuss or vote on?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think we should open the public hearing and hear from the public, and then I think if we as a board agree that it should go down to 5, that's my opinion. I should have clarified that, but yeah. But I think we could recommend that the council adopt that change without having to renotice and redo a public hearing tonight. Is that, yeah, I'm getting a nod from Caroline in the back
So just
there.
one last little thing. We did have to make some changes with our operating hours, obviously, because of my complex and the fact that we have doctor's offices, we have Maine Solar there, we have other local restaurants as well. So in my lease agreement, we will be operating mostly at night through the week. So we'll be within that cap of the time, I think 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. But it'll be 10 o'clock during the week, and then on weekends, it will be 11:30 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night. So Saturdays and Sundays will operate full day into the night, and then weekends. I know I mentioned we were going to do lunchtime until 5:30, but we've reached some issues with coming to an agreement so we don't affect the businesses that have patients that come in on a regular basis. And so we can also accommodate the traffic and focus on the traffic flow at night. It allows when all the businesses are gone by 5 o'clock. So the parking lot is completely empty besides just Thai Gardens and Athena's Cantina. So to accommodate for more parking as well.
Do you have a planned start date, assuming this passes?
Yeah, so June 7th will be our first opening day. Our closing day will be November 17th, 15th, or before our first snowfall. So.
Right. Do I hear a motion to open the public hearing? In a second? All right, all in favor? All right, the public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak?
That's it.
Yes, please. Yeah, and just as a general note, the podium microphone is in a great spot. It doesn't need to be touched, and we ask that everybody, if you could please identify yourself before speaking.
Lisa Aropoulos. Just some questions about this. So is it just food trucks? Or is it like you have an events?
So it's just food trucks. If we do have private events, we'll have private events. If anybody requests to have the whole food truck park as an event, we will have that.
So, sorry, I'm just trying to think through the process of how we can take public comment, because we can't really have a back and forth without having microphones in the audience. So if you have, I know it's a hard way to go. So let me.
Do you want me to just stand up there with them?
I don't know if can we do that? I think a way to streamline it might be if you have specific questions to address them to the board, and the board can discuss. And if we have questions for Thais, then we can ask them as part of our discussion. And if we need clarification or something, we could potentially call one of you back up at the end. But yeah, just because of the public process and the way we have to make sure that everybody can hear everybody else, that's kind of how we have to ask you to do it. So if you have specific questions for the board or comments that you want to make to the board and to the public, then that's the goal.
Okay.
just so that the people on Zoom can also
Yeah.
hear, because the people on Zoom can't hear people when they're talking on this.
So where did you marry this idea from?
We-
Say we want this for Freeport. Like, where have you seen somewhere else that's been like, it's amazing?
This is not the board's concept. So if you have comments for the board, like if you feel a specific way about this, the public comment period is meant to, so it's a chance for you to express those views. So if you have views about the project or questions for us about the project, but we aren't really able to do a back and forth. But typically the planning board does not not everything we discuss is like an idea that originates from the planning board. It's also possible for things to come to us, and then we discuss them and decide if we should put them into action.
This specific project, we'll call it a specific zoning amendment change came from the town council and town manager. So it wasn't anyone in the planning board that was like, hey, let's
I mean,
do that.
just my 2 cents. I feel like as far as food trucks, as far as like trying to, for the town of Freeport to be able to handle the excess tourists that we have during the summer, I think a lot of it's downtown. I see a lot of the people, the foot traffic, people that, are coming for events at El Bean, that they throw these crazy events and bring in thousands of people. I think the downtown, as far as catering to the tourists and the people who visit Freeport, would be greatly more beneficial than on Route 1, where we're kind of outside of it. We have plenty of restaurants that have lots of parking that people can go park to that don't, it's easier for them to visit those restaurants, whereas downtown, people are walking around more. So I feel like it'd be more beneficial to have something like this downtown than on Route 1, where I think there's a lot of restaurants that cater to the people that come through Freeport.
And it's possible that town council, somebody did bring something like that idea out at I think the last town council meeting. It was here. And, there was some interest on that. Right now, you could have food trucks at downtown at the village, but because it's not a zoning district that specifically allows it, they have to get a temporary activity to do it. So it's only on like these special occasions, and that's how, when El Bean is having an event or any other business or area is having an event, they can bring them in.
Okay. Am I not allowed to ask taste questions, or is that not possible?
I think you can ask questions. It's just hard for us to have the direct back and forth of response.
I mean, I guess, is nobody concerned about the food trucks cannibalizing the other businesses around?
There's been a lot of sentiment that there's not enough restaurants in town.
There's, really?
Yeah. That's what I've heard around.
That's a common.
That's a pretty common.
I mean, how many restaurants are in town? When I count almost 30 restaurants in Freeport.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has come up before, we've talked about food trucks in Freeport over several years. And it is a concern that we've heard before on the board. I think the sense that we've gotten on the other side is that, a rising tide floats all boats, and more people eating good food in Freeport is good generally for business in Freeport. And bringing more people to Freeport is generally good for business in Freeport.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too. But I think where the market is too is, I think the lack of restaurants might be downtown to cater to the people, the influx of people.
Absolutely. And I think the board, or at least speaking for myself, I tend to take sort of like a yes and approach to these kinds of changes. Like if we can support all the businesses in town, that would be great. I think there's a lot of structural challenges downtown that are preventing more restaurants from coming into downtown. If we could fix all those with our magic planning wand, it'd be fantastic. But we have the tools that we have. So if we can support projects outside of downtown, we're happy to do that. And it's not to the exclusion of supporting projects downtown.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern is with something that's temporary, so people can come in, it's kind of trial by error. Where the restaurants are brick and mortar, they're glued to this town of Freeport, and they try to make it work year in, year out. Coming from myself, with Antonia's Pizzeria, we'd run profitable, I'd say, for 7, 8 months. And then 4 months of the year, we're still open, but we run in the red. But we have to be there. We don't put our restaurant on wheels and say we're leaving and going somewhere to make more money. We're glued to the town of Freeport, and that's what we do. So we count on being very busy between the months of May to December, pretty much, I guess, the months that you're proposing. So it's a little concerning to say you're going to put 8 food trucks, essentially 8 new places to eat, and to say, will it bring up more people to come to Freeport? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think many cases when you just oversaturate a market with places to eat, you pick from, the pie doesn't get bigger, you just cut it in smaller pieces.
If you took a poll of every business in Freeport that relies on public the public to help support them, they all have the same 4 months. I think it's great to have something down that end of Freeport to drive people in different directions, just other than just the downtown. But I do hear your concerns. I mean, like Sam has said, or David, it's nothing new. It's definitely been a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it does bring more for everybody, and I hope, like you said, that the tides do rise for everyone. You know, and I mean, it would be nice. I mean, it's not really my backyard, it's more than your backyard, and that's kind of, I don't understand why you would want, you have your own restaurant, why wouldn't you want to bring people more to your restaurant?
Do you have other comments other than that?
Yeah, it's concerning just to say, you know, when you have something that's temporary and people just try it out, and if it doesn't work, they put the restaurant on wheels and say, we're going to the next place. You know, I think the brick and mortar places, we should look out for those and make sure they're doing okay and to succeeding. So that's my 2 cents.
Much appreciated.
Okay. So as you said, yes, I do have my own brick and mortar restaurant. We opened Crazy Local Corn, which is now Athena's Cantina, in 2019, and we skipped some processes that just didn't allow food trucks, and we had to close down 3 months later, forcing me to not wanting to give up and still loving Freeport and wanting to invest everything into this town. I brick and mortared 5 years ahead of the time that I had planned to do. Then COVID hit 3 weeks after that. And we've been pivoting, we've been doing different things, we've been trying to stay afloat, we've been going from catering to different things that will keep our restaurant open, and here we still are. I can't staff, it's my husband and myself and 2 young kids. Nobody wants to work, or nobody wants to do the job, or, you know, the way that you expect, or the way things used to be before COVID. So our way is to be able to still keep our restaurant open by offering our bar, having our Taco Tuesdays 1 day a week that we are open, doing our catering during private events, and being able to offer this opportunity for Freeport. Now that I sit on the Chamber Board of Directors, our vision and our goal is to bring new businesses to Freeport. And for me, these options, these food trucks could potentially open up brick and mortars, could potentially decide that this is so great, we love it here. Our landlord is treating us well, they're welcoming us and treating us like family. We want to start a business here. Again, I could tell you that maybe 4 or 5 restaurants could open up on Route 1 tomorrow. What then? You know what I mean? So a brick and mortar makes more money than a food truck in one setting. They don't last long. They sell out faster than a restaurant would. So, and like we've spoken before, and I told you, my goal is to bring things into Freeport that we don't already have. I want to bring more authentic food. I want to bring different flavors, different things that we're lacking a little bit in. When we have families from LA, from Canada, from Florida, from New York, from all over the country, to have a little bit of home and a little bit of authentic foods in town is important. And like I told you before, we're not, 2 or 3 of these trucks may be a sweets truck, or maybe an ice cream truck, or maybe just something different. So we're just trying to be able to give opportunities for businesses that are looking for places to call home. And I've made Freeport my home, and I've worked so hard to be able to continue to operate my business, and I do it by myself with my husband and 2 young kids. And we keep going at it because I can't fail. I have children that look up to me, and when I do these things, my daughter sees it. So to me, it's like I'm going to work and work and work until something works. And this is not, for me, this is not temporary. This is not something that I'm just going to invest all this time and, you know, go around town saying, I want this, and have the town council and the planning board work so hard to be able to push it forward, and then we just disappear. We're going to make it work until it works. So.
Have any other comments from the public? Thanks, Thais, too. I should have said that.
My name is Toby Pick. I'm actually owning a food truck. It's called Bolicious, as you see. To answer your question, so Brunswick has had food trucks in their town for years. 5 food trucks a year. It brings people from other communities because they follow those trucks. So we have people that follow us an hour and a half away. So what happens is they'll come and live with your food truck, but it also, if they say one day they come up and they don't want to eat off, they'll eat at other restaurants. So you're gonna bring in other people that will see other restaurants. They may not eat at your restaurant right then, but they might see it and come back later. So food trucks I don't think are a detriment to your town. I think, like you said, it brings more business in because they do have followings. Every food truck has a following. So it's gonna bring people to your town. They're gonna see that it's, especially like this is a great setup. So to answer your question, I think it is gonna bring more people. And those businesses down in Brunswick have no issue with those food trucks being there. Because there's other stores there as well. They have like Cools and Moose, and there's other stuff there that people go and, they go into the town and they'll buy stuff from there too. So if you know.
Isn't Brunswick a much bigger city though, like 20,000 people?
I don't know how big Brunswick is.
It's massive.
But it's not
Brunswick
just the people in Brunswick that come is what I'm saying.
I understand.
So it's other, people do follow those trucks. There's talk with the town that's been there for like 12 years, and we had the town meeting on a Monday, and they were like, if you don't have talk with the town back in our town, we're gonna revolt. That's what she actually said. The woman got up and said, if you don't have this truck back, we're going to revolt. So I know your concerns is having a brick and mortar, but I think if you work together with her and see it as a plus, I think you're gonna see that it is gonna bring you more business. So that's just me, because I'm in the business. I see how much they like food trucks. They like the novelty of a food truck. You know what I mean? And it brings other things it will bring other things to you. So I don't know if that helps at all, but there is other places that have food trucks.
Aren't in Brunswick, there's like, it's with foot traffic, right? People are in the town and the food trucks are in the town.
Well, they also have a lot of tourists in Brunswick too.
The what?
There's a lot of tourists that come to Brunswick as well.
But what I'm
So
saying
because
is
they go to
food
the,
trucks aren't like a destination, it's more like.
So, again, really can't have a back and forth from the public
so
to
what
the
he's,
podium.
I guess what he's saying is, people do come just for the food trucks, yes, but there are more people that come from out of town. It's not just the townspeople. Yes, there's a lot of foot traffic, but there are people that come to eat at that food truck is what I'm getting at. And there's other things in town that they go to once they're there. So you might have something that they like and they don't want to eat off a food truck. They might come back later and say, hey, I remember that pizza place. You see what I'm saying? That's things that do happen when you have other people you have an influx of other people that see, and that they get to know the town, and everybody loves Freeport anyways. Freeport's a great town. So that's my insight for you. I don't think it's gonna hurt you. I just don't, because I've seen how it works there. And yeah, there might be more people, but it's not just, it's still that you're bringing business from other places too. Because there's people that come from Portland to go up there to eat. That's just true. We've seen people come, like I said, an hour and a half away to drive up to our truck. So you're gonna have that following, but they come to the town to see other things that they might be interested in too. So, I don't know if that helps at all. But.
Thanks, yeah. I'm happy to hear from a variety of perspectives, as always. Any other comments?
Hi, my name's Amanda Kent, and we have the business on Route 1, Main Wicked Goods Mercantile. We're halfway down Route 1. 4 years ago, we started this process with Thais because she came to us and said, what do you think if I had a food truck as an accessory to your business? And we were like, oh my God, that'd be great. We have no place to go for lunch, really, unless we go into town, or we go to Yarmouth, which is a problem. And so that was one of the first time we came before you guys, and the process was gonna take so long to try to straighten it out. She was only allowed to be at our business for less than a month at that time. And we really legally weren't even allowed to have her because in our zone, it only allowed for food trucks as an accessory to a, whatever it's called, artisanal food or beverage location, which meant a brewery, basically. And that's how the breweries were, it was really from Maine Beer that first started. And Maine Beer had their pizza truck, and then eventually they were able to build up and build a pizza area into their location. And that's really where this artisanal food and beverage location that you'll see for the other zones. So we fought very hard to have Route 1, which is a separate zone, allowed to have food trucks as accessories to the businesses. We would still love to have a food truck accessory to the business anytime during the day, and we might still talk to Thais about the possibility of having some food trucks that can't come at night be at our location, you know, for a few days here and there. And I know there are other businesses that would love to do that too, because even though you say there are 30 restaurants in Freeport, I find that very hard to believe, because I live in Freeport, I eat in Freeport, I've been to your business many times. I've been to your business many times when I can't get in. And then I have to make a choice. Well, do I want to get to go to take home? Do I want to hassle with the wait? You know, it's all those kind of decision makings for local folks who will avoid a lot of places. And my big issue is Route 1 is part of Freeport. You know, we call ourselves the dirty stepsister, because, you know, every single car that gets off of the highway, that gets off at exit 17, goes right by our business and continues on down. And the signs at exit 20 say down in our area, oh yeah, they're boats, and something else on the signs that are the signs. They don't say that there are other businesses. They don't say that there are antique stores. They don't say that there's, you know, more restaurants. And it's really an unfortunate kind of thing, in that the city is more concerned, I think, with what's in downtown and what's around the downtown than really caring about the other entrances to town. We have, I think, 4 or 5 different hotels and motels right on Route 1. Those people will go out during the day. They'll go to Portland, they'll go to Brunswick, they'll go up the coast. We've had people come into our shop and say, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to Bar Harbor. And we're like, you're driving to Bar Harbor for the day? Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna do, and then we'll be back. And we're like, okay, you know how far that is? But they will base themselves here in Freeport. The people who camp down at Winslow Park are here year-round, or the whole summer sometimes down there. They'll come up and they'll shop with us, but they'll love something like this if they don't have to go all the way into town or deal with all the other crowds of people. They're going to love this, and to have that option to get something quick to go, to take back to the office or to take to their own location, or to stay right there and sit and enjoy it and be fast and easy and quick. And I think that's one of the things in Brunswick that is so inviting. I've gone to food trucks in Brunswick because I know that I can get something easy and good and different, and, you know, try different types of things instead of having to, you know, sit down in a sit-down type restaurant, even if it's a fast sit-down restaurant. So we really support this, and we think it's a great idea. We support all of the restaurants that are in our town. We go to all of them, or have gone to all of them consistently. But as a person who lives in town and owns a business in town, it's very hard for us to not want to see more action and more activity down in our part of town too. The whole plan seems to be focused always around what's going on in downtown. And we got a lot of stuff going on down where we are. So it's nice to have something new and different that's coming to our area, and we'll again put some more emphasis, and we'll bring more people in. I mean, when we advertise in the Press Herald, which we do for our business, we get people coming up from Portland, and they come into our shop and they say, oh, we just want to get a quick bite, where can we go? Well, you can go into town, you can go to Antonia's, you can go to the Lobster Cooker, you can go 2 doors down to Cindy's, but oh yeah, they aren't open right now. You know, oh, you can go down to the Harris Secret, but, you know, they're low-staffed, so they're closing soon. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of issues with how the food restaurants have dealt with COVID and the amount of people that come in.
Thanks, Amanda.
So anyway, thank you.
Any other comments in public?
We also
Good
have
evening,
2
my
people
name's
on Zoom.
Gaetano Quattrucci. I have, I support this proposal, this concept. I have spoken in years past, when this option has come forward before by other presenters, it has come forward with not much of a plan, not a whole lot of thought, and the location was always pretty much downtown, and oftentimes relying on a public facility and support from the municipality. I think this proposal is, I know this proposal because I'm familiar with it, is very well thought out. There's an operational plan, there's a business plan, there's a financial plan. The location is good, and competition is the marketplace, and people look for different genres to eat at, to dine at, under different circumstances, and I think the crossover is a good thing because it does indeed bring exposure to other businesses that can be utilized, including food businesses in other times and other visits to Freeport, including from locals. And try not to forget, because institutional memory fades, this town invested a significant sum of money installing infrastructure on Route 1 South to boost economic activity down there, and both residential and small business use. I would hope the town would let's see how this opportunity plays out and move forward with it, and I think local people will support it as well. Thank you.
Anyone else?
2 people.
Oh, yeah, right. We have 2 people on Zoom. Anyone on Zoom who wishes to comment, please raise your virtual hand, and we'll bring you over. I don't see any virtual hands. We'll give you one more moment. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
We're still doing that?
Second.
And a second, all in favor? All right, the public hearing is now closed. Any more thoughts from the board?
I would just suggest we don't need to change the 8 to 5 just because of this applicant's change in plans. There's going to be an independent review of any permit application anyway, so 8 might be appropriate somewhere else, so I don't see any reason to make that change.
Eight feels like too many to me. It just feels like too many. I mean, you know, I don't know if I've ever seen a food truck park with 8 trucks.
If you go to a concert at Thompson's Point, maybe, it's probably about 8. There's a lot. And the lines are epic. I mean, that's a captive audience, it's a totally different situation, yes.
This is the type of determination that will be made on a local basis for each application, so if that's the case, it won't be approved
I
for
can't imagine where 8 would be here in Freeport, though.
I could imagine, you know, might be a.
You brought up the 8, so Caroline said that it would be ideal for us to ask for the change, just for.
So we have,
Control.
so we have Thais is making the comment that as the sort of, what do you want to say, the driving force behind this proposal, she thinks it's a good idea to go down to 5. So.
Before I even started to make up the mock-up plan and really thinking that it really brought me, like, hey, let's
Right,
slow down a little bit.
But Thais is concerned with her particular plan and that particular location. I don't think we need to foreclose the possibility that it could be 8 somewhere else. We were all teed up to approve 8, so.
I think we were, speaking for me personally, it felt to me like we were excited about an idea that could support local businesses and bring, you know, different types of traffic and people looking for different things to town. But I'm supportive of that goal, but as far as the particulars of it, I mean, if somebody with a lot more expertise in food truck operations tells me that 8 is the right number, then I'm not gonna question that too much. I mean, I'm gonna give it kind of a gut check, but I think on a little bit more thought, and if the folks who have the expertise in the food truck industry are saying 5 actually is a better number, a more manageable number, and a more appropriate number, then my inclination is to go with that recommendation as well, especially since I think on the gut check, it does kind of make sense, like 5 food, I mean, you couldn't put 5 food trucks in this room, you know?
Oh, I mean,
Keep in mind too, some of them are really large.
Right, yeah, they're big, they can be big.
I think originally, though, you'd also mentioned that because of doing the rotation, that it was up to 8, you probably would have more like 6, but.
Yes, so we would probably have more like 6, but I mean, it's just going through it, we're just like, it's too much. And with someone that, unless you're really, really have the expertise in it, it would just get out of hand. I just feel like it would, and I've driven down on Route 1 to even see where the possibility of even adding anything like that. There's not many any businesses that operate to those times that would be open to even allow it, except for the open lands that are out there. But, I mean, I mean, a developer is gonna come in and create a whole food truck park. I don't see people going into that, especially if they see one already doing really well. You know?
I think maybe we just got the Christmas light, which might mean that turn the mic on because they might not be
fair
able
enough.
to hear you guys, so.
Yep.
yeah.
I was so on that all night, and then I totally,
Let me just say, the ordinance was not meant to prescribe the optimal number of food trucks. The ordinance was to set a limit on food trucks, and the optimal number would depend on a particular location. And I don't think we need to predict, that 5 is always going to be the limit.
But I can't think of a single location in town what would really, I could imagine 8 food trucks being there.
I don't really agree with that. I mean, I can imagine that it could be suitable for a particular proposal. Maybe it's a temporary proposal when all the parking lots are empty, or, there's.
I mean, I think if we have if we take the view that maybe whoever's approving the application might not give, enough thought to how many food trucks and how many, I think if we put that check on this, especially initially, just say the town feels like 5 is a good place to start. That feels like an appropriate step.
Until this particular applicant changed their mind. So
Yeah.
I just don't think that's what should be driving the ordinance.
It's not driving with my thinking of it.
Can I chime in? Should I introduce myself again?
Do we need
I
to
don't.
reopen the public hearing?
I don't think you need to introduce yourself again. We don't need to reopen the public hearing, but I would say if we could just keep it to like a minute.
Yeah, all I was going to say was that the concern about numbers, the only area right now that in the ordinance that you're changing it for is C1, right?
No.
That's true, no.
Yeah, it's not, none of the others except for artisanal food and beverage locations in those other zones are allowed to have.
There's the nature-based art overlay district, which is Desert of Maine.
Oh, well,
They would-
Desert of Maine,
yeah,
true.
yeah,
Well,
sorry.
Desert of Maine and Route 1, C1 are the only locations. All of the others that are on that map would not be applicable to have more than,
And Mila
It
is
would,
working with me too on that.
sorry,
Her
to,
and I, so.
to clarify, it would, you could have a artisanal food and beverage on the MDA district and be able to
right, but
be
it
eligible
has to be
for-
hosted by an artisanal food and beverage according to the zoning rules.
Right, with the C1 and the nature-based art overlay, it could be associated, it could be accessory to any kind of permitted use, but on these other districts, it could just, it could be limited to that
Right, and there are certain rules that are acceptable for that, which wouldn't apply to the numbers that you guys are talking about. So that's going to have to be another change down the road if one is to be ever put in downtown Freeport.
Yes, it wouldn't be
Because
applicable.
it seemed like you were confused about that. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you.
So, again, I know your concern about changing it. We brought it up, we requested it for it to be up to 8. So I think based on all the work and all of the background that we've did, all the checking, asking other food trucks and what it works, how you can control it and keep it moving and working well, 5 would be just, honestly, I mean, I can almost guarantee if you ask anybody, the expert in this type of thing, you could go to Condom After Dark and ask them, I'm sure they would say that there is a limit that would work best versus 8. I mean, I will tell you, it's a lot. And we figured that out after we asked for it, and the town council was like, let's move this forward, great. We figured that out when we started to put the whole plan together and really put numbers together and really put the traffic flow and everything together. And, I mean, you can even look in there in the setting, if you drive down at 491, you can see it. And, I mean, I just don't see it anywhere else, like Amanda said, where it's going to allow for that.
All right, we need to move this forward. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Can we have a straw poll on people who support moving it to 5 versus who want to keep it at 8? Those in favor of restricting to 5? All right. Sorry, Wayne,
No problem.
I feel like we gotta get through this. I don't want to get hung up on this detail. I think it's a good proposal. You know, I hope it moves forward. I think if the council wants to make amendments, they could do that, but I think if we recommend it if we follow the recommendation from the, you know, from the applicant here, is that the right term? Applicant? Was there an applicant?
No, Thais
sorry.
is not an
Not
applicant. This is
but
the
the
town
council, right,
council
from the
directive.
council, the directive, the sort of, what's the right, advisor, maybe. So there is a motion, right, prepared here. Did I see one? No, I didn't
No,
see
I
one.
didn't prepare a motion. You guys been really good about
You've been
doing the
good about
motions
motions. So somebody
yourselves,
who is in favor of that, this proposed change with the update that we restrict to 5 trucks.
So do we have to vote on the amendment first?
We have to vote on the motion to,
Amend. Motion to amend the language?
correct. And it has to be, as always, would have to be found to be consistent with the current comprehensive plan. And that it supports, for example, a variety of economic
Yeah, I think
options
the
in town.
economic is part of the vision.
Supports local businesses, right? Isn't that one of the?
Would a compromise for you with up to 6 work out better for you?
Oh, I don't really have any strong opinion. My comments,
If we do the change, do it
I think
outside.
my comments were just about the process,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. So for
I
the
do understand
proce-
that, yeah.
For the process, you know, I was the one who put the 8 there because I understood that to be the direction because it was what was asked. For a lot of different types of ordinance, especially if this was something that the planning board would be bringing forward, I would actually call around and do actual research. But how this came through another path, which was council directive, based on this idea that Thais presented, I just kind of went with the flow of what was suggested for that, without doing research. So that's why the number 8 is there. So it's not based on any
Right.
Yeah,
best practices.
I don't purport to
or-
know what the right number is. I'm only saying that we were prepared to approve 8. It's a limitation, it's not a prescription for what's the best number for trucks. And
Yeah.
I don't know that there's no possible place in town where 8 would have been the best number. But it's not a big, it's not a problem, I don't mind. putting it
Yeah, I
back
mean,
to
it's a
5.
somewhat unconventional process, and I think it's, it's worth saying that, yeah, it doesn't always happen this way, but I think in the interest of trying to
Yeah, it's
move
fine.
it forward relatively quickly and recognize that there's potential upside, and while there's always potential downside, there's also guardrails and opportunities to change things if we need to in the future. And I think we've sort of been clear that we're broadly supportive of that approach, so. Does anyone want to make a motion? Want is maybe a strong word.
You can use the agenda to know which sections to refer on the motion in terms of the section 501, temporary activity, and section 526A, food trucks of the Freeport zoning ordinance.
So I can just read, be it moved? or how do we?
Yeah,
do-
be it
okay.
moved as the-
Be it moved to section 501, temporary activity, and section 526.
Well, we have to, yeah, we have to make the amendment, to
Okay.
update the ordinance.
It would be section 526A C2 is what you
Yeah,
want to
so
amend.
we have to, right, reference these changes.
So we'd start with be it
In
ordered.
zoning,
What's that?
So you could start with be it ordered that the,
be it ordered in zoning districts where food trucks are allowed as an accessory use per section 526A1C2 of this ordinance, one temporary activity permit from the codes enforcement officer can be issued per parcel per calendar year? Is that, or is it my?
hold on, let me work on drafting one. If you want to make a motion, it could be it ordered that the planning board approves the proposed recommended
Yep.
amendments to section 501 temporary activity and section 526A food trucks of the Freeport zoning ordinance with
The proposed change.
The proposed change.
That we limit the number of food
The number of
trucks
food trucks.
to 6.
To,
I mean, sorry, to 5.
Five
from-
food trucks at a time.
Just read the number 6 in it.
At a time for up to 6 months. With the
That
issue-
part is,
That part we don't,
well, that part is just already baked in.
Okay.
The 6-month part. So I
Okay.
think if you say the proposed changes.
the proposed changes would
To
allow.
section 501.
To, the proposed changes to 526A,
Yeah, but also 501.
but, and also to 501.
Did you write it out?
Activity.
Here.
So, yeah, I mean, maybe it's a good, so the process is always right, that the planning board is recommending a set of changes to the town council, a set of proposed amendments to the town council, and in the motion needs to reference the sections in which there are proposed changes. So that's where, sort of the structure of a motion would be it ordered that the planning board recommend to the town council adopting the proposed
Is it 1,
changes
2,
in
C?
section 501 and 526.a or whatever it is, and then you say, with any changes that we've discussed at the meeting.
C2.
Do that, and then we have found that it is, consistent with the existing comprehensive plan in the following way. And that would be sort of like the structure of a motion.
Okay.
If we could just have all-purpose fill in the blanks.
It's too much to write.
She probably can't get that.
And then the comprehensive plan.
We should have like a Mad Libs motion.
Right. So, be it ordered that the planning board approve the proposed to section 501 temporary activity and 526A food trucks with changes to section 526A 1C2 from 8 to 5 trucks, food trucks.
Then the comprehensive plan.
And this is in compatibility to the comprehensive plan.
In that.
In that,
It's found, it
It
supports,
stimulates-
local business.
local business.
Heard it here first, right? And we have a second from Dave. All in favor? All right, excellent. So we're in a little bit of a pickle in that we have overrun our time for this meeting, and we are supposed to be starting a workshop at 7. Caroline, do you have any guidance for us on that? I don't want to, I recognize there's sort of peril on either side, right? Being late versus skipping.
I think the last item will be actually pretty quick.
Item number 3? Well, the last item will definitely be quick, right? Adjourning. Sorry, I just had to A little barb there. Item number 3 is, so we'll move on to item number 3, which is a discussion of possible amendments regarding the maximum height allowance in the VC1 zoning district. Possible options for the discussion may include amending the definition of story, so that's a building story, or eliminating the limit of up to 3 stories in the VC1 district. While Caroline is making her way to the podium. Yeah. Do you want to do the overview here? Is that?
Yes, so this was really just to get some feedback from the planning board. So you might remember that in 2021, based upon some feedback from the community and recommendations from FEDC, the planning board looked at making some changes to the zoning ordinance to try to encourage more multifamily and mixed-use development in downtown Freeport. So we amended some definitions, and we changed the standard for height. So the height in the Village Commercial 1 used to be 35 feet. At that time, kind of the current planning trend was to go to stories, because the thought was that would give developers more flexibility. We had used stories in the C4, which is a little district immediately to the west of 295, where the Cross Tree residences are located, the 144 apartment buildings. So the planning board made that change. So fast forward to 2022 into 2023, we completed an extensive downtown visioning plan, and there was a lot of talk about uses downtown and where buildings could go and parking lot redevelopment, and some more conversations about height. Could we go higher? Could we go taller? Could we go to 5 stories? Could we go to 6 stories? Where would that be appropriate? We have since seen some housing developments come in. It's drawn great interest from our community and a lot of mixed opinions. One thing that I think has been clear that we've heard over and over at this point is that there is a nearby community to the south that has 2 really tall buildings surrounded by parking lot. And we've heard a lot of people say, that's not what we want here. So now that we've made some changes as a community, we freed up parking. We have plenty of parking lots to the tune of hundreds of spaces that are sitting there not meeting a requirement. They've just already been developed because they're there, and some of those are on the market. So we're starting to get calls, and people are looking to do stuff. But 3 stories, as we currently define it in the zoning ordinance, is the limiting factor. And the reason that's the limiting factor in cases of redevelopment of multifamily is because the people that are looking to do that in Freeport, a lot of them are exploring the option of at least doing some partial pedestal parking. Fancy way to say parking under the building. So the way we define stories, it doesn't exempt parking underground, and it doesn't exempt area below grade. So if they want to put parking underneath, they would really be limited to 2 stories. So this has come up, I've been identified by the Housing Committee, building height as a barrier, and we're getting that question a lot. So there's not a question for the planning board, is given the current ordinance requirement for building height in the VC1, which is defined as 3 stories up to 45 feet, is that something that the planning board would consider amending at this time? I think there's a couple ways you could do it. I think you could redefine stories and include something to either exempt parking below or exempt stories below grade, or to kind of align with the building code below grade plane. The other thing you could do is simply keep the height at 45 feet and strike the 3 stories. Realistically, that would allow up to 4 stories to be constructed. When we talked about this before, there were some concerns about, we knew we were changing it up to 45 feet. There were some concerns about conflicts with the other ordinance, in particular with design review. We know we have, as a community, recently made some changes to design review, and so now when the project review board is looking at projects, there at least is a radius within what they're looking for compatibility of 500 feet. We are working on getting an RFP out to overhaul it, so you'll have that factor coming into play too. So you do have a little more guidance on what that compatibility is for height, but the question is looking at the way either we're defining stories or striking the 3 stories in VC1, something that the board's open to. We talked about this before, I just want to remind you, we don't calculate height by just standing at the side of a building and looking up. We calculate height by taking the building, going out in 4 directions, 20 feet, finding the average elevation, and then calculating the height. So we have buildings in Freeport that are already ground up higher than 45 feet. For example, the corner of the parking garage at Freeport Village Station, if it was built to plan, which we'll assume it was, is about 47 feet. We have some properties on Main Street where like Cole Haan, Under Armour's there now, ground up. In this case, this would be going to the peak, that is 48, the backside's up in the 50s. So just kind of keep that in mind and just for some comparison. So we're just looking for feedback. If the idea of striking stories but keeping 45 is something the board's open to, would bring you some amendments for consideration. If you want to go higher, we can do that. If you want to look at amending the definition of stories, or if you really don't want to go there, that's also fine too.
So in some ways, the cleanest, simplest way to do it would just be to strike stories from the whole VC1, right? So, but that would open up the possibility, I mean, we think, generally speaking, the area that is most likely to see this sort of development is being on Depot Street or on the way to Depot Street, maybe, where the grade is sloped, and because of the way we calculate building height, you're likely to have a taller facade on the downhill side and a shorter facade on the uphill side. So if the building were quote-unquote 45 feet according to the calculation, we would still have the sort of protection, if you think of it that way, of the uphill side facing Main Street being less than 45 feet. So that would be like the shorter side. Because often the concern that we hear from people in town is that we don't want big, tall facades on Main Street, right? Is that
Right, so if you, I
fair?
mean, if, like any zoning provision, like food trucks, if you put it into ordinance, it does open up the opportunity.
Right.
I think your limiting factor there would be that compatibility under design review.
And so then, you're right, so then my next thought where I go from there is like, it's the whole VC1, right? So we have the other side of the street as well, where it's flatter and where a building height calculation is a little more straightforward, given that it's flat. So like 45-foot building over there is gonna look more like just a 45-foot building. But we do have that compatibility standard, so if most of the buildings in the neighborhood within 500 feet of any new proposed building are lower, then that could potentially rein in.
So we can't, zone just for one specific parcel.
Right,
But I
yep.
think we do have flexibility. So if the board's like, look, now you could do 3 stories, 45 feet technically, anywhere. And so we're still talking right now about the same height, but if you felt like you're okay with 45 feet and 3 stories some places, but not you'd go bigger in certain parts, that's another thing we could look at, like parcels that don't front on Main Street. But again, right now, you still have that 45 on the books.
Right.
I mean, it seems to me that the easiest solution is to get rid of the concept of stories and just go by feet, however that's measured. But personally, I would be interested in raising the limit too, because I think any obstacles to increased housing in this town is the priority. And if we can get developers who are more interested in coming in and building something, if they can get 50 or 60 feet, if the design review finds it compatible with the particular location, I think that would be a good thing.
So if that's where the planning board wants to go, that's 100% fine. I have some concerns about that until we finish the RFP for the design review ordinance, because we recently had a project on Main Street that people felt wasn't compatible and it was too big in height and scale. Realistically,
35 feet, wasn't it?
the building was I think the building was like 31 and a half feet. So I think if we could go higher because you would have that radius of compatibility, but just something to be aware of.
But don't those issues get addressed on the design review phase, even if we increase the limit here?
We do, but because the design review standards are currently seen as somewhat subjective, it's been an issue, the height.
Well, we're trusting some town officials with that objective judgment, so
We are.
Volunteer board.
Yeah, we are trusting a volunteer board to make those decisions. The board, in the example I gave, the board made a decision, the public didn't agree, so it ultimately got appealed. I mean, they didn't agree for many reasons, but height and scale was one piece of that.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of broadly agree with you, Wayne, that I think, one of the sort of most straightforward ways to encourage or allow for a more economical construction of housing is to allow for bigger boxes, right, to put it somewhat crudely. But I think my concern is still on protecting Main Street. I think there's something that, broadly speaking, the town has identified as worth protecting on Main Street, and there's the quote-unquote character of Main Street. I think people maybe disagree about what it is about that character that's worth protecting, but whatever it is, there's something there. So I think I almost can't believe I would propose an overlay district, but it almost seems like the kind of, I know, both planners are looking at me like, are you serious? Like,
Chalmers is looking at you too.
but it actually, and so that it kind of would, I don't know, and I would defer to others with better technical expertise than mine, but it seems like that would get at the sort of thing we're trying to do, which is say, encourage bigger buildings, but not in very specific places. And I recognize it's not quite the right way to do it, right? If we wanted to do this the right way, we would do the RFP first, and we would kind of incorporate it all into the design review district changes and do everything at once. We may not exactly have that luxury. There may be more pressing reasons to change this, or.
So I think there's people calling, and there's people that want to do projects, and there's people that are saying, pretty much everyone's saying a 3 stories multifamily is not economically viable in downtown Freeport right now. So this is an opportunity, I think, at the present time. I think if you make this change, you'll likely see at least 1, maybe 2 projects come forward. Never a guarantee. People call me all the time with great ideas and then they never come back. But that's kind of the feeling we're getting. The part, I think it might just be Sam that was on the board, but the planning board did look at kind of creating a parking lot redevelopment overlay district. It just
Didn't go
went
very well.
south for many reasons. But one of the things it did look at was, we might have areas that's more appropriate to go 4 stories or higher and others that we don't. I think if you want to raise that 45 feet, I think you also need to look closely at the comp plan and see if you feel like going higher right now is consistent with that current comp plan.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, the new comp plan could say whatever we encourage them to put in it.
Right, but if you make a change, you need to find it consistent now. But yes, the new comp
I
plan.
have never seen a change that can't be found consistent with the 2011 comp plan. So, I think.
Depends which side you're on.
You need to ask yourself a question at minimum of, what's viable for these developers? And, we want housing in this town. That's all I've heard since, I've gotten on this board. I think for sure we want to think about maybe raising the height. I don't know that you need to go to 18-story building here in town, but up another increment is probably not a bad thing. And, the way I envision it is you maybe have like, mixed-use retail or some kind on the bottom, and then 2 or 3 or 4 living stories above that that's what I would like to see here.
So for
It's not what you're
example,
gonna necessarily get, but.
the buildings in Falmouth that are surrounded by parking, they actually just went to referendum and got repealed, I believe, but those were a 60-foot building height. Now they just dropped back to 45, but that's an example of a 60-foot. So I think you could get probably 5, maybe you could squeak in 6 stories, but I think it might be a little bit harder.
Yeah, I
You
guess.
said
I'd
those
just
are
be-
60? You said the name of the town. I didn't think you were going to do that, but
Well, this was just a neutral example. I didn't tell you what town I was talking about before.
that is true, technically. So those 6 in Falmouth. If we're driving down next time.
It was on the news.
Driving down Route 1, we could take a look, and those are 60-story.
That is my understanding. I've not gone and measured them, but my understanding those are around 60 feet.
Those are the ones that are built in the Shaw's parking lot, not the new ones that are going in behind the crossing.
Yeah, I'm not sure that new one. I feel like the new one might actually be under the same height standards. They just recently changed, but I don't have the details on that.
I don't know that, I think they look like that, they look tall because they're just sitting out in the middle of nowhere.
I was just gonna say, it's a good way to make sure that
It's
they
not-
always stick out, is you
Yeah, I
lower
mean,
them
if I think if
so
you
that
set
they're
them in
always
town here, they
20
really
feet taller
wouldn't
than
probably
everything else.
be.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would, if it came down to a binary decision and the decision were strike stories or do nothing, I would be in favor of striking stories. I think we have the protection of the existing, and again, existing but recently amended, design review district. So I think the intention there was to allow additional flexibility while retaining some, sort of character savings. And, yeah.
I agree with that, but I would also suggest that we should have a serious conversation about a significant increase in the height limit.
I also agree with that, and I think the time for that, as frustrating as it is to keep delaying these things, I think the time for that is gonna be with the RFP and the consultants for the overhauling this, the design review district, because I think those changes could also, it doesn't have to be limited to the design review district. I think we as a planning board can decide if we want to take up, once we see how those changes start to take shape, what direction we're going in. I think that's a great opportunity to take the next step from there and say, okay, now we have this, now is the right time to raise the building height.
Carolyn knows much more about this than any of us do, but I would hate to see a proposed development not come.
I agree with
Because we
that,
couldn't act
yeah.
quickly enough
Right.
and approve something that we really need here.
I mean, I don't think I would be, if we're at 45 feet, we're at 45 feet is our,
3 stories, 45 feet.
I mean, I would go
Well, if
55.
we strike story, we're just at 45 feet.
Yep, they could go up to 45 feet.
We couldn't get the one next door built at 31, so I don't think we have to worry about.
I know.
Correct. I do think if you look at that 500-foot compatibility, I'll call it radius for lack of better terminology. I mean, clearly on Depot Street, there's something that, the parking garage, I believe they can already build to 45 feet there. So they have something, they have various heights because they also have mallet structures, but they have something nearby at that height. Where up here, I mean, I don't know the calculated height of public safety, but
We
I
tore
think it's
down
a
shoe
little
shops taller than
less
45 feet.
obvious.
Yep.
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 So do I have a consensus to come back with striking stories?
Well, I'm fine with striking stories.
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
Okay. We'll be back in April.
How long will that take you? It's like,
2 minutes. Actually, well, if I have to log into my computer, maybe.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's the easiest zoning amendment you will ever get, right? Strike or, yeah, fair enough. Don't jinx stuff. That's good advice. Okay. Anyone here, item number 4, is anyone wishing to address the board on non-agenda items? Anyone?
Anyone online?
Right, yes, I forgot about Zoom. All right, do I hear, you're not getting up to address us, are you? No. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
What happened to the
That's next.
comprehensive? Oh, that's next.
That's a workshop. Yep.
Oh, okay, do
I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn the public part of the meeting, move into workshop.
Second
Great.
the motion.
Second from Bonnie. All in favor? All right, meeting is adjourned, and we will now move into workshop mode. If anyone wants a drink of water, we can take like a 3-minute break. I'll even set a timer.
Cracking down.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I was 3 minutes late, so from a
Good.
morally superior position than I'm doing this, I guess.
I guess I'll stand up for a second. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that's a good idea.
Before we sit here for another, who knows?
Yeah, those,
Well, if we did a half an hour per,
right.
at least an hour and a half, so
Yeah.
we're already at 9. I like the color of your sweater.
Thank you.
Did you make it?
No,
No?
no, this is Peruvian
Beautiful.
alpaca.
Nice. Oh, my goodness.